Power that cannot be questioned is merely failure waiting to happen. Back in the blinding present, the silence engine roared, a deafening absence of sound that tore at the fabric of space. Kaelin's armor was gone, vaporized by the initial impact, leaving only the glowing, shifting geometry of his skin. He felt the frequency tearing at his mind, demanding he cease to exist. It was the ultimate authoritarian command, written in the language of the universe. But Kaelin was no longer just human, and he was no longer listening. Do not fight the wave. Elara's voice cut through the chaos, clear as a bell. She was behind him. Her hands pressed against his shoulder blades, her essence flowing into him to stabilize the volatile reaction. The heat radiating between them was hotter than the weapon's discharge, a fusion of trust and terrifying power. Harmonize with it. The Syndicate expected the humans to break. They expected the Terran spirit to be a rigid wall that would eventually shatter under superior force. They did not understand that true human ingenuity was not about building a harder shield. It was about changing the frequency of the target. Kaelin closed his eyes. He stopped resisting the erasure and instead opened himself to it. He felt the oscillation of the engine, the precise mathematical arrogance of its design. He matched it. His heartbeat synced with the weapon's pulse. The violet light erupting from his chest turned a blinding pure white. He didn't reflect the beam. He assimilated it. With a roar that was less a sound and more a psychic shockwave, Kaelin seized control of the energy stream. He fed it back into the source, not as a destructive force, but as a cancellation code. The silence engine stuttered. The reality warping field collapsed in on itself, imploding into a harmless singularity of static before vanishing entirely. The silence that followed was natural, born of awe rather than erasure. Kaelin fell to his knees, the light fading from his skin, leaving him gasping and mortal once more. Elara was there instantly, catching him before he hit the scorched ground. Her touch was the only thing anchoring him to the physical world. The electricity of their contact chased away the numbness of the void. "You are still here," she whispered, her forehead resting against his. "We adapted," Kaelin breathed, gripping her hand. Above them, the sky filled with the descending ships of the Galactic Council. They came not to rescue, but to contain. The Syndicate fleet drifted dead in orbit, their systems fried by the feedback loop. The observers looked down at the man who had eaten a supernova, expecting a conqueror. They expected him to claim the engine, to enforce a new order. Kaelin stood, leaning heavily on Elara. He looked up at the circling warships, the gathered might of a galaxy that ruled through fear of the unknown. He tapped his comms, broadcasting on an open frequency to every species in range. "The engine is gone," Kaelin said, his voice rough but steady. "And so is my command." He severed the link. It was the ultimate lesson in adaptive resilience. Humanity had proven it could become the apex predator, capable of snapping the spine of the galaxy's greatest threat. But by voluntarily stepping down, by dismantling their own military hierarchy in the moment of absolute victory, They proved something far more dangerous. They proved that they did not need to rule to be safe. Elara watched him, a smile touching her lips as the adrenaline faded into a warm, steady hum between them. They had broken the cycle. The universe had demanded submission, and they had answered with the one thing power could not understand. They changed the rules of the game, and then they walked away. The silence engine did not scream when it activated. It simply deleted. A frequency so absolute it overwrote the fundamental laws of physics, turning durasteel to smoke and courage to static. At the epicenter of the disruption, Commander Kalen Vance did not dissolve. He stood his ground, armor stripped away, his skin radiating a volatile violet luminescence that terrified the Galactic Council observers more than the enemy weapon itself. To the Syndicate, humanity was a rounding error, a biological accident. They had calibrated the engine to unmake the structural bonds of carbon-based life. They had not accounted for Kalen Vance. He raised a hand, his fingers wreathed in impossible energy, and caught the reality-erasing beam. The air distorted, heating to the temperature of a small star. Kalen grit his teeth, the sheer pressure cracking the ground beneath him, his eyes locked on the horizon. He wasn't just surviving the erasure, he was metabolizing it. The universe demanded submission, but we only heard a challenge. 12 hours earlier, the wreckage of the dreadnought Titan pressed down on Kalen's chest with the weight of a collapsed mountain. There was no room for fear, only the cold, hard arithmetic of survival. His oxygen scrubbers were offline. His legs were pinned beneath a twisted girder that had once been the pride of human ingenuity. Any other species in the coalition would have entered a meditative state of acceptance, preparing for the void. But Kalen was a death worlder. His heart beat a slow, stubborn rhythm, refusing to acknowledge the crushing inevitable. A shimmer of light cut through the suffocating darkness. Elara. She drifted through the debris, her ether-born form ignoring the gravity that pinned Kalen. She was light and geometry, a stark contrast to the blood and crushed metal. She hovered over him, her features shifting in a display of distress that transcended her species' usual stoicism. Kalen. Her voice resonated directly in his auditory cortex, bypassing his ears. Your vital signs are critical. The structural integrity of the hull is failing. I cannot move the debris without collapsing the pocket. Then don't move it, Kalen wheezed, the taste of copper sharp in his mouth. He tried to smile, that reckless expression the rest of the galaxy called the Terran spirit. Just get the data core. Run. I do not accept that outcome. Elara descended, her hand passing through the metal to rest on his forehead. Her touch was liquid fire. The Syndicate often mocked humans as Space Orcs, brutish, durable, and unsophisticated, but they underestimated the terrifying compatibility of human biology. We were the universal recipients of the galaxy. This is forbidden, she whispered, the light around her fracturing. The celestial ichor is not meant for solid forms. It will burn you out. I'm already burning. Kalen gasped. She didn't hesitate. Elara pressed her palm against his chest, and the gold-violet essence of her people flooded into his veins. It wasn't a healing spell, it was an override command. Pain, white-hot and electric, surged through him, rewriting his DNA in real time. This was the essence of a science fiction story turned manifest reality the moment the biological limit was shattered. He screamed, not in agony, but in the sudden violent expansion of his own potential. The debris didn't shift, it vibrated, the metal groaning as Kalen's muscles, now fueled by a stellar hyperreaction, pushed back against the tonnage. He was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming an apex predator in a food chain the galaxy hadn't realized existed. We didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we changed. The girder screeched, yielding to his grip. Kalen rose, the heavy plating crumpling like paper in his hands, his eyes burning with the same violet light that swirled within Elara. She looked at him, fear and awe warring in her expression. She had tried to save a man, but she had forged a titan.